Can't get enough of Kelly and Ramya?
We're now on YouTube for you to indulge in highlights from our show.
All right, let's talk about a real incredible initiative that takes place every year, and it's coming up now in July, the 13th Annual Disability Pride March. It's happening on Sunday, July 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and part of the march's purpose, as always, is to raise awareness of disability-related issues. So today we have two guests from the organizing committee of the march to tell us more and give us more context and tell us how things are happening this year, and that is Sivert Doss and Spencer West. Spencer, Sivert, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you for having us.
So
We're so excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Spencer, let's start with you. Starting with the highlight, the message of this year's march, please.
Yeah, the message is always community-led, but at its core, this year is to just recognize the struggles and values of disabled and mad people as we fight against ableism and oppression, and just to be visible and to show that we exist and we want the same basic human rights and opportunities as non-disabled folks as well. That will always be sort of the underlying theme of the Pride March itself. But as I said, often it's community-led, and that's why we have a bunch of speakers that will talk about a range of topics that are important to them and that are happening currently.
Okay. Sivert, can we talk a little bit about some of those topics that are being raised this year, the important ones that you know for sure are going to come right up first and center?
So one of a bunch of the issues that we're talking about would be including accessible housing, low rates of social assistance, transportation, surveillance, and police violence. And we're also really talking about, this year especially, the intersectional nature of disability. So like highlighting the issues that disabled people of color face, the issues that disabled poor people face, the issues that disabled queer people face. So like very much talking about issues from a more intersectional, complex viewpoint than just sort of disabled people need equal rights, which is true, but also talking about the intersectionality of these issues and how they intersect with each other.
Yeah. I know. I think a lot because I've done some speaking and talked about, as a person of color, the circumstance of for me, what have I found the hardest to deal with? My vision problem, my skin color, the fact that I'm a big guy. And I think a lot, especially through the pandemic, of people who may be newcomers or people who speak a different language first, not English, and how disadvantaged people were. Then you add the component of disability. I'm sure that comes up on the table immensely when we talk about this intersection.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially with what's going on in Palestine right now. We've been talking a lot about, including talking a lot about genocide and colonization and how those are disabling actions. Genocide is a disabling act. And what's going on in Palestine is a mass disabling event. And so that's one of the big sort of issues that we've been talking about over the last few months is how can we properly address the needs of our Palestinian communities and our Middle Eastern communities, and also how can we best support our indigenous communities. That was also a big issue that we've also been talking about for the last few months.
Right, because I mean, there's disability as, of course, one part of our identity, but then there are so many things going on around the world, global affairs, if you will, but a lot of politicizing that affects our own experiences here, our perspectives, our perceptions of whether we're being heard or not, and like how our government and our advocacy is going on here is just one little tiny part of the bigger picture. So, Spencer, coming over to you again. Obviously, the mood and the political climate makes a huge impact on how people are coming into the march this year. So joyful, defiant, these are just kind of the spectrum of things, right? How would you describe the mood this year, or the tone of the march?
Yeah, one of our sort of leads of the organizing committee, Ariel, said something so lovely recently. She said, the mood is it's going to be disabled folks screaming together, raging together, and also celebrating together. Yes. It's sort of the full human experience of all of those things and all the things that we face on a daily basis. But I think sometimes the piece that we forget is there's also a lot of joy in there of being in community and being together and understanding that we are stronger together. So I think it's always a mix of those three things that we're weaving in and out of, depending on the day and what we've faced that day. But I would say that's generally the mood and just the camaraderie of like we're in this together.
Hmm.
Yes, yeah, and seeing, like you said, the in it together. I know a lot of portions of the disability community get painted with a brush of kind of looking out for themselves, not working together or maybe desiring to. And I feel we're seeing a bit of change where there's a lot more getting to know, whether it's through social media, the other circumstance, and something like this march, really tremendous to be able to pull it together. As we see by Spencer, who are some of the key speakers that'll be there, the guests that are going to be joining and having a few moments to kind of help everybody get inspired and band together?
Yeah, we have a range of speakers that are going to be joining us on Saturday the 13th, which is so exciting. Like, one of them, of course, is MP Sarah Jama from Hamilton. We're excited to welcome her. She's been such a strong advocate for our community and all the things that she's gone through. So I think she's going to have a really beautiful and interesting perspective. A friend of both myself and Sivert is Gatry Killings, and I know Gatry's done a bunch for AMI as well. We want to hear from her perspective as a deaf queer woman. And so there's a lot of those folks. We have some elders that are coming in from the Indigenous community. We have one of our mentors and friends, Janet, who was a part of the original TDPM, Toronto Disability Pride March Organizing Committee, is also going to be speaking. So we have a wide range. And then we're really excited because at the end, we're going to have some celebrations this year, a performance from the Raging Grannies, which are just such an incredible group of amazing women, and a few other surprises. But that's some of the highlights of some of the folks that are coming.
And can you quickly tell us the accommodations that will be available for participants and people who want to come along on the route, and how long is the actual parade route?
Absolutely. So the whole thing is going to be from about 1 to 5. It just depends on how long the speeches go, but we usually probably bank about 30 to 45 minutes, and then this march itself is going to be about 2 kilometers. So we're starting at Queen's Park and ending at Grange Park, potentially going down University. Towards past all the hospitals. We feel like that's really important for us this year to do, so that we can be seen and understand how helpful and harmful those places can be. And you asked a question before that, but I can't remember what you said. Can you remind me?
Just the accommodations, as well as the accommodations, because you mentioned the route already.
Thank you. So this year, one thing that was really important to us was releasing an access guide to let folks understand what the options are. We want to make sure it's as accessible as possible. So we'll have a van for folks that maybe have some mobility issues that still want to be a part of the march but can't physically march with us. There'll be a van that's following the parade. Of course, we'll have ASL interpreters. We're going to have sighted folks to help folks that are blind or low vision. We also have a personal service worker this year, which we're really excited to have to provide any support that might be needed. Plus the cars can also be used for folks that maybe need to pull away from all of the noise and just sort of regulate. So we have a whole guide on our website and our social media that lists every single thing, but those are some of the top highlights.
That's great. Spencer, thank you for highlighting those. Sivert, tell me and our audience a little bit about how you feel over the 13 years that the march has evolved. I'm sure some of the things Spencer just mentioned are in that, but what else has happened over that time? Because we know it takes some time for that snowball to build.
Yeah, I would say the march, I guess, began in 2011 out of Occupy Toronto, and I think what's changed over the last 13 years is I think it's become a lot bigger, and two, it's also become a lot more of a community. I feel like we really do we are in communities, we are in talking within communities, not just us as organizers talking amongst ourselves and deciding things. It's also like we are also deeply connected to communities, particularly the most marginalized communities. We're really passionate about including the most marginalized voices. And so we're big on finding out what those communities need and what those communities want and what they want to see represented on stage, for lack of a better term. And so I think ultimately the march has become a lot healthier and a lot bigger and a lot more healthier because we include the voices of multiple types of people. So.
Sivert, what do you believe the impact is of this being held in Toronto? Toronto is a lot of times the way we talk about, disability experience in a personal way, being like, we're advocates even if we don't want to be, especially on the days we don't want to be. I feel like Toronto has a stamp of that, right? Like, we're a huge urban center. We have so many people with intersectionalities living here. We have events that, bring out millions of people. What kind of an impact does that have on the Disability Pride March?
I think it brings a lot more attention to the Disability Pride March, because I think one of the big things is that how inaccessible this city is. Like, there's a lot of most buildings are inaccessible for a lot of people, especially like if you're in a wheelchair. It's very difficult to get around in the city. So I think raising awareness around that and sort of like challenging the city, like why is that? Like, why do we have entire buildings, entire streets, entire communities that are inaccessible and very much segregated for a large portion of the population of disabled people? And so I think that I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure what. Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Oh, no, you're answering it well. I totally agree. Like, the city itself can feel very inaccessible, and there are a lot of people experiencing different ways of that. And so is that what you feel is an impact of it being held in this city, the march?
Yeah, I think so, because I think it really highlights what, really asks the question, like, why is this okay? Why are we allowing this to happen? Why is this, we as a society in Canada, a society like to call itself progressive, why are we allowing these things to happen?
Yeah.
And I think that really puts it front and forward and puts it in people's faces.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to that sentiment. It's a huge city. We coin it as being so accessible in so many ways, and yet, we still feel like we're very far behind. Thank you so much, the both of you, for coming on the show. Really appreciate you teeing up the event, and all the best on the 13th.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for watching.
You can catch Kelly and Ramya weekdays from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern on AMI.